I've audited well over 200 Klaviyo accounts at this point, and the biggest issue that I see business owners make with their email marketing is their campaign strategy. So what I want to do in this video is give you the full raw build of a campaign strategy from scratch, show you exactly what you need to plan out, what you need to consider, and all in all, what needs to happen in order for you to run a strategy that your list will actually enjoy. Now, to start, the reason you want your list to actually enjoy this strategy is because the whole point of running email marketing is so that you can long-term retain those customers and get them to keep coming back and keep buying. So if you bore them with a selfish email strategy where all you do is sell and you don't actually provide them any value, they're going to churn. And when they churn, they stop buying because they're not constantly being flooded with your brand's content or whatever you're doing to keep them in your ecosystem. So once again, we're going to jump into the raw, unfiltered footage on exactly what you need to do to build out a strategy that is actually effective. So first off, there are a few different things that you want to consider when it comes to what, a few different considerations when you're actually building out the strategy from scratch. So the first thing is going to be your sending volume. This is extremely important because it's going to determine not only not only how much volume your subscribers are actually getting in their inbox, but it's also, if you do this the right way, it's going to make sure that your deliverability scores are better, meaning you'll land in your subscribers' primary inbox rather than going to spam like a lot of brands do, because they're not diligent of this and they're not diligent of what the sending volume actually does for that. So we'll get into the specifics of that in a second, but the second big thing to consider here is your segmentation. There's a ton of different things you can do for segmentation, and honestly, it's probably the biggest aspect of what actually goes into building the campaign strategy outside of the actual angles that you're using. But segmentation is a massive one. We're going to dive into that in a second. The third point here is going to be your value to promotion ratio. Now, this one is extremely important because, like I said, if you promote too heavily, too often, people get bored. They see that it's just a selfish marketing strategy and they don't feel like they're actually getting value from being on your email list, so they churn. When they churn, they stop buying. So we want to keep them on the list by being valuable to them. Now, the next thing that kind of plays into this is plain text to design content ratio, content style ratio, I'll say. So again, we're going to dive into each of these separately, but design content, as you've probably seen, is going to work really well for e-commerce brands because it's a highly designed email. It's very on brand. It's also very good for getting high click rates because more people are going to click through and it's very visually pleasing and very easy to digest. But plain text, on the other hand, will be really good for some e-com brands. Plain text is amazing for. But when you look at like a coaching business or an info product business, for example, plain text becomes a lot more applicable and it's going to be used a lot more often, especially than when compared to e-com. Although I will say, for a health brand, for example, plain text will do extremely well. But again, we're going to get into the details of that in a second. All right, the fifth thing here, and it's kind of an outlier, but we want to really take into account any big sales or events or promos or launches or holidays or anything like that that is coming up. Because when we're building out that calendar, if we forget about something like Christmas or like Thanksgiving where we're running some promo or sale, for example, it's going to mess it up and then we're going to have to sneak it in last second. So we want to plan for that stuff in advance when we're building out the campaign strategy and the campaign calendar. So starting off with sending volume, this is kind of going to be based on your metrics. So in general, we always want to stick with about a 40%, 40 to 45% minimum open rate. Again, the reason being that we want our deliverability score to be good. And when your deliverability score starts to slip, or your sender reputation, when that starts to slip, and once again, I want to clarify, that is not a number that you can actively see, but these email platforms like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, whatever it is, they have these numbers behind the scenes that you don't have access to, but they are there. And when your sender reputation is poor, they will put you in spam. And that's what happens to a lot of businesses because they're not diligent of what they need to do to improve that score. But when your sender reputation is good, you land in primary tab very often. And that can be different for different people. For example, someone who replies to one of your emails. So like, let's say we're an e-commerce brand. We send out an email. At the bottom, we say, hey, if you liked this topic, reply with the word yes, and we'll know that we'll send out more content like this. If someone replies to that email, then they are going to get more emails from that brand in their primary inbox, most likely. It's very highly likely that that will happen if they sent a reply back. The reason is because the email platform that they're using, let's say it's Gmail, for example, it knows that it trusts this brand. It knows that that person trusts that brand. So anyways, this is a long way of saying we want to make sure we're optimizing our sending volume for making sure that our campaigns are getting strong open rates. We want 40 to 45% minimum average open rates across the board, again, as an average. In Klaviyo, there will be something called a deliverability score. I can actually pull up a picture of it really quickly for you. This right here is an example of a deliverability score. When you go to Klaviyo, there's a little deliverability tab and it'll show you this. Now, this is going to tell you that all of these things that are essentially just different metrics in Klaviyo will go and be taken into account in terms of your deliverability. But a lot of these things don't actually matter for deliverability, truthfully. Like, for example, your open rate, yes, that matters for deliverability because obviously if you're landing in the spam folder, your open rate is going to be worse because way less people will see it. It's going to be really bad. But click rate, for the people that actually open the email, your deliverability does not affect if they're going to click or not. So click rate, that does not impact your deliverability. Bounce rate. Actually, let me clarify. The click rate does somewhat impact the deliverability because it's based on engagement. But regardless, it's not going to have nearly as much weight as something like an open rate. Bounce rate, this obviously this will have a massive impact on deliverability. Unsubscribe rate, again, that's one where if there's people clicking onto the email, then they got the email, right? They got it in their inbox. Now the content itself is what's going to determine like the click rate and subscribe rate, for example, including the spam complaint rate. That's kind of how we look at it. Again, those things do impact the deliverability, but not nearly as much as a weight as compared to the open rate and the bounce rate. So that's a really important thing to take into consideration there. Now, when you're determining what you want your sending volume to be, it needs to be based on your open rates right now. So if you're getting 40 to 45% average open rates right now, I would encourage you to start sending more emails per week. So like, let's say we're sending 3 to 4 emails per week right now. We want to send as many as possible because the more we send, the more money we're going to make. But we don't want to sacrifice engagement and churn of the list at the same time. So if we're at 3 to 4 per week right now, but we're getting insanely good open rates and the click rates look good, we're going to ramp that up a little bit. We'll go to like 5 to 6 per week. If we start seeing some pushback there, the open rates start to drop and like people start to get more fed up, there's more unsubscribes, and it's not like a healthy unsubscribe rate, it starts to become unmanageable, then like we know, maybe we hit a cap or maybe we have to dial it back slightly. So that's kind of the mindset that you want to have when it comes to determining what your sending volume should be. Next up is segmentation. So we have recently gotten really granular with this, so I want to explain to you exactly what we do because I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of the people watching this right now. So when it comes to the things that you're actually segmenting by, the main ones are going to be non-buyers, one-time buyers. Let me write this all out for you. So these are the main 4 groups that we want to typically segment by. Now, this is based on buying history, but the other thing to consider here is typically going to be email engagement. So you're going to have people that are in like a 30-day engaged segment, meaning they've opened or clicked an email at least one time in the last 30 days. You can do that same thing, extrapolate it out to like 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 180 days, whatever it is. And that's a good way to segment as well because most of our emails are likely going to go to the most engaged list. Like, for example, 30-day engaged segment, that's where most of our emails are going to go. But the other thing to consider here is that we want to send to as many people as we possibly can. Again, like I was talking about with the sending volume part, while maintaining a strong open rate and other deliverability metrics like we talked about. So let's say I send to the 90-day engaged list or segment of our list, and that gets us strong metrics, then I know I can keep sending to our 90-day engage segment and we're going to do just fine. I might even try doing 120-day engage segment consistently and seeing if that still gets good metrics. If so, we just want to send to as many people as possible. And obviously, the bigger that engaged group is, the more people will be in it. But a lot of the time, that might only be like your 30-day engage segment that you'll have to use in that example. But when it comes to mapping out exactly how we want to attack different segments of the list in our campaign strategy, these are the main ones we'll look at. So you've got non-buyers. Obviously, these people need more like direct response style content because they've never bought from you before, and we're trying to get them over that hump. We want to educate them. We want to obviously still give them a lot of value and keep them on the list, but we want to push them closer to getting to that sale. Obviously, it's going to depend a little bit based on your sales cycle what that sales cycle typically looks like. But yeah, that's kind of the mindset with non-buyers. One-time buyers have already tried the product. Again, buyers are your most valuable people on this list, so we want to take good care of them, but we also want to keep them buying over and over. So it turns into less direct response and more branding and more just giving them value, building goodwill, building a lot of trust, giving them content that they actually enjoy coming back to, but still putting different buying opportunities in front of them. So we never really send out value emails without some type of sale in it, whether that's, or not like a sale in terms of a discount, but like literally promoting products is what I'm trying to say. We want to weave products and like whatever it is that we sell into literally everything that we do. Obviously, 2x plus buyers, these people really trust the products. So it's going to be just another notch up in terms of even more value, less pushiness in terms of pushing products in front of them. But again, we're still selling in some way always. And then VIPs, whatever that is in terms of how you define that, a VIP is still going to be your most valuable person. For some brands, this is their subscribe and save list. So people that are on subscription, they have a monthly recurring subscription that just gets paid automatically. We honestly don't even want to contact those people that often because they're already at the end goal. We'll send them out like some company stuff once in a while, or just like some general like newsletter style stuff. But yeah, we don't want to market to them too much because they're already at the end goal. Like we're not trying to push them up to a next stage, which is really important to consider. But at the beginning of this, I talked about how we get more granular with it lately. So let me show you exactly what that looks like. So the first part of this is the non-buyer, like the way we group the non-buyers. So if they're, think of all the non-buyers in your email list, right? We can actually draw this out for you. So let's take a pen here. Let's draw this. Let's say these are all of your non-buyers, right? Let's say about, a fourth of them here have been on the website, added a product to their cart, but then left. And obviously they're still a non-buyer, but they added a product to their cart at some point. These people are the abandoned cart non-buyers, and we want to send, in many cases, we'll send the same content to all three of these groups, but we just send them in different campaigns so that we can see what the difference in data is. Because sometimes the difference in data will tell us a lot about how we need to approach these different groups for your business specifically. Then let's say the abandoned checkout people, obviously it's a little bit smaller because less people are going to get onto the further step of the funnel. But then these are your abandoned checkout people, right? And then again, we're looking at that data separately. Then all of these people are your people that have never abandoned, meaning these are non-buyers who have been on the site. Some of them have been on the site. You could even go deeper in this with this if you really wanted to. And you could go based on active on site or never abandoned / active on site. So then in this case, the active on site people would be the non-buyers who have been on the site but didn't get this far in the funnel. They've just been on the site. You can even do this where they've viewed a product but they never added it to their cart. That's another good example. But yeah, this is the type of stuff you want to be looking at when it comes to breaking out what types of non-buyers you have based on their intent. And yeah, it gives you a lot of good data on how you can attack those people. Then when it comes to the one-time buyers and the two-time buyers and the VIPs, it really just comes down to your products. Like for example, we have a high-ticket product company that we're talking to right now. High ticket for that, I mean, like it's not really a high ticket, but they sell products that are only like $750 to $1,000, $750 to like $2,000. So with compared to other e-commerce brands, which is what they are, it's slightly higher ticket, so that's why I say that. But for them, we're going to branch that out based on the two-time buyers, for example, the two-time plus buyers. We want to know the two-time plus buyers that have bought a high-ticket product and then more accessory products versus the ones that have bought like multiple high-ticket products, because those are two completely different types of buyers. So we want to group them separately and look at that data from them separately. So yeah, hopefully that sheds some light on how you want to segment this and what type of groups you can look at, and specifically how you can do or how you can position yourself to each of them. All right, so next up, we got the value to promotion ratio. This, for most of you watching this, is going to be best suited as a 3-to-1 ratio or a 4-to-1. Let's do or 4-to-1 ratio, meaning for every email where you are selling or promoting hard and not giving any sort of value whatsoever, there are 3 that are mainly giving value. And obviously, like I said earlier, we still like to sell because we don't like to dance around the fact that we have good products and that we want to sell them to you, or good services, whatever it is. But we want to give value because that's what we're all about. Like, the company is there to help people, right? So we want to give the value, about 3 pieces of value for every one that's promotional. This is going to be the answer for most of you watching this video right now. This is tried and tested through a ton of great advertisers, great marketers, and this is kind of like the rule of thumb that we always like to stick to. So I'd highly recommend it for you as well. All right, so next thing that we are going to talk about is the plain text to design content style ratio. Now, this is going to be completely dependent on a few things. It's going to be dependent on your brand. Let's make this left centered or left. Okay, cool. So your branding / products. It's going to be based on your target market, and that's pretty much it. So the reason that we want to take these things into consideration is because a good example of this is a clothing brand is not going to send a lot of plain text emails. Why? Plain text emails is only copy. It's just words, right? So you're not going to sell an aesthetic product like a t-shirt with words. You're going to sell it by showing the aesthetic of the t-shirt, right? When it comes to a supplement company, for example, you are not going to sell that by showing a picture of the bottle that looks cool. You're going to sell it with words because it has an acute pain point that it solves. So we need to market it with great copy, whereas a t-shirt needs to be marketed with great designs. This is kind of like the difference between those two types of products that need to determine how much of each you use. Now, plain text and design can both still work for each of those examples, but you're going to use different levels of each. Like, the supplement brand is going to use a lot more plain text compared to design. Then the clothing brand is going to use a lot more design compared to plain text, but they each still have their time and place. So that hopefully gives you some perspective on when you should use which based on yourself. Now, the target market comes into account based on how they actually consume content. One good example of this is that we had one business we were doing email marketing for where they were marketing to like contractors and builders and stuff, and those people really like to consume via text message. So SMS for them was a great channel. And again, that's obviously just text. So that's one example of where taking into consideration how your market likes to consume things is really important. Going back to the supplement brand example, we have one supplement brand that we work with right now, and their audience is a little bit more sophisticated, so they like to read. They're very open to reading. They're not opposed to that whatsoever. On top of that, it's a supplement, so copy sells, which is great. Most of the time, we find that plain text emails actually bring in more revenue than design emails. However, you can't, again, based on the brand and the products, you can't send as many plain text all the time as you can design, because the design content will get better engagement, better click rates, and stuff like that. So again, this is all very nuanced based on yourself, your brand, your products, your market, but it's very important to take it into consideration when you're actually building out the campaign strategy. All right, the last one here is big sales or promos or holidays. This one's pretty self-descriptive, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But again, you just want to take these things into consideration. This could be stuff like, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Obviously, massive one for e-commerce specifically is going to be Black Friday and Cyber Monday. That's going to be a big one for e-com brands. And then you've got stuff like a blowout sale that you're doing, for example, or you might have like an overstock sale. It's one we hear about a lot. So stuff like this, you want to take these into consideration when you're building out your calendar for your campaigns. We always like to have our calendars built out at least at any point in time, 30 days ahead of time, ideally like 60 days ahead of time. So I recommend staying ahead of these because when things pop up last second or like you have a random offer you want to launch or anything like that, you have the content done ahead of time, so you're not like scrambling to do this stuff that you were already doing and then adding in this new content. It just becomes a whole mess. You want to get your calendar built out ahead of time so you can work these sales, these promos, these holidays. You can work them in beforehand. It makes your life a lot easier. So yeah, pretty quick when there, not too much to do. But with that being said, hope you got a lot of value from the video. I had a lot of fun doing this one. And it's also extremely helpful for literally every single business that we work with when it comes to their email marketing. So definitely take these things into consideration when you're actually building out that strategy. Now, if you want help building this out for your business, we will happily do a free audit for you and show you exactly what type of strategy we think would work for your business. We're a fully in-house team. We've generated well over $10 million for businesses using email and SMS marketing alone. So we'd be happy to help out. The top link in the description is going to be a link to book a call with me. So you can jump on there. We'll talk soon. If not, the second link in the description is going to be a link to jump in my free newsletter. I send content like this out all the time in that newsletter. And again, it's completely free. So yeah, any questions, drop those in the comments. Talk soon.